So if you find this sleep story helpful or interesting, then give it a thumbs up, leave any comments that you've got below, and if you aren't already, subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon so you can receive notifications of when future sleep stories go live. I have dozens and dozens of stories already on my channel that you can go and search. I also release new stories every single week, so I hope you enjoy this story. Okay, so just take a moment to close your eyes and allow yourself to get comfortable. And as you get comfortable, you can begin to drift off asleep. And I don't know whether you'll drift asleep faster to the sound of my voice or the spaces between my words. But as you continue to drift comfortably asleep, I'm just going to tell a story in the background. And this story is about two men going on a holiday. And ever since they first met, they've always shared that they've both always wanted to go on a safari. But in all the time that they've been together, it's just never happened that they've had enough money or the situation to allow themselves to do that. And now, after many years of being together, finally they're going on safari. And they've travelled out into the middle of nowhere, staying in a lodge that's miles and miles from the nearest town. And it took them a long time to get here, to travel to this country in a plane, to travel from the airport all the way out to this lodge. And they've arrived at this lodge late in the evening, and it's still incredibly warm. And they're aware that it will get colder as the night progresses, but currently it's still a very warm temperature. And they enter that lodge, they check into their room, they put their luggage in the room before heading down to the restaurant to have something to eat. And they sit in that restaurant, they can hear the background mumbling of people at other tables, sounds of cutlery and crockery and glasses, and everything just feels so calm. The sounds are muted and relaxed. And they enjoy their meal together, talking quietly across the table to each other. And they can look out over the grounds of the lodge, seeing the trees swaying, illuminated by moonlight. A pool out there, the silvery light dancing as the wind just gently blows across the surface. And they can hear the nighttime sounds as they continue to eat their food and enjoy their first evening here. And after they finish their food, they go out for a walk around the grounds, making the most of a pleasant evening. Before heading to the lodge's spa and going into the outdoor jacuzzi and relaxing in that bubbling, warm water, listening to the sounds of the night, the occasional sound of bats flying over, sounds of crickets, the occasional sound of a bird. And the distant rustling of leaves of the trees as the wind blows a breeze. Just relaxing in that jacuzzi, feeling of that bubbling water, massaging and tickling the body, that weightless feeling of the body in the water. Continuing to enjoy each other's company. Feeling like this jacuzzi is massaging away all the stresses, all the tension from the long flight and journey here. And as the night got later and later, so they went to bed and drifted comfortably asleep, falling asleep so quickly because of how tired they were from their journey. And the next day they go for breakfast at the lodge. And the breakfast is a self-service breakfast. So they go up, they help themselves some food, some drink. Enjoy that breakfast before going with others on a tour for the safari. And this is what they really wanted to do. This is what they came here for. And in the back of a 4x4, the two of them and some others travel off from the lodge, initially following the road and then turning off onto a dirt track. Following this dirt track, bouncing along, heading towards some woodland. And the men have their cameras out, always ready to take a photo of anything they might catch a glimpse of. They keep looking at each other and smiling as they think about the fact that they're here together on this journey, on this safari. And after a couple of hours of driving, the 4x4 pulls over, skids to a halt near the woodland, and they all get told to get out of the 4x4, that they're making the rest of this journey on foot. As they all head off deeper into that woodland, trekking their way through the woodland, and the terrain is difficult to walk on, so they understand why they wouldn't be able to get this way in a 4x4. There's not a lot of room between the trees. There doesn't seem to be any sign of a path that a vehicle could take. And they feel like they're walking uphill slightly, although being in dense woodland, it's difficult for them to tell. And then after a while of walking through the woodland, they notice the trees thinning, and there are more rocks and boulders, and they notice that they are getting higher. And then the guide gathers everyone together, says we're going to stop here for something to eat and drink. So the group stops, they enjoy something to eat and drink. They can feel the warmth of the day in this slight clearing, and notice that sun overhead. And after eating and having something to drink, they continue to follow the guide until eventually they notice that they're at the top of a cliff. And it's not a particularly high cliff, but it's a cliff that looks down over a vast plain. They can see off in the distance what looks like some mountains or very high hills. In another direction they can notice some more dense trees. But they realise they're looking down over a vast plain, and the guide says that that's where we're going. We're going to be going down there to that plain. And the guide starts leading them down a narrow path that weaves left and left and right down the side of that cliff edge. And it's quite a narrow path, but reasonably easy to follow. And the guide jokes that later on we'll be heading back up this path. The getting down is the easy bit. And so they head all the way down to the plain. The men stop and they take photos of different animals they spot. They're really excited by their experience. Having this once-in-a-lifetime experience they've waited years to have. And they've both got ideas of what it is they would love to photograph. And as they walk out into the plain, the guide says that there's a truck out here waiting for them, and that they'll be getting in the back of this truck to travel deeper into this area. And that being in the truck is obviously safer here than being on foot. And they reach the truck or climb into the truck as it then travels across that plain. And once it's travelled quite a distance, it pulls to a halt, giving them time to get their cameras, look out the windows, and take photos of a pride of lions, take photos of other animals, of zebra, and photos of animals drinking at a river. And they find it interesting that they're aware that these animals, some of them hunt the others, and yet down by the river, they'll be drinking side by side. And they took as many photos as they could of all the different animals they saw. And they took photos of eagles flying high in the sky, so gracefully circling, catching warm air, rising up, circling up higher, seemingly effortlessly. And then the truck would move on to another area, travel some distance, where they would get an opportunity to take some more photos. And then it would move on somewhere else, and they'd take more photos. And then it arrived at what was like a mini lodge. And the guide said that we'll be just staying here for the night, and then in the morning you'll make your journey back. And they all disembarked and went into that lodge. They're all shown to rooms. And then after everyone had gone to bed, the two men were researching this area and were talking about their photos, about the animals they'd seen, and were already sharing some of those photos online. And they were talking about how surprised they were that even in the middle of nowhere, you can manage to access online and share photos. And as they were researching the area, they found out that there are some ruins not that far away from here. So they decided, while everyone drifts and floats asleep, that they would just nip out. It's only a very short walk. And they'd walk to that location just to check out the ruins. And they felt like the location they were in was safe. It was all gated and fenced off, and it seemed like the ruins were within the fenced off section, but just in a deep area of woodland. And in that deep area of woodland, it looked like these ruins were ancient and had been there for a very long time. And they didn't come here to explore ancient ruins, but they felt that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So they snuck out with some torches and they went exploring. They pushed deeper into that woodland, searching for signs of those old ruins. And after a little while, they started noticing some stones on the ground that were heavily overgrown, but resembled broken walls. And they realized they must have arrived where the ruins are. They shone their torches around and they explored those ruins. And then one of the men found an entrance, and so the two of them went over to that entrance. They shone their torches in the entrance, and the torchlight disappeared into the blackness. They realized that there were some steps down into this section, and this entrance wasn't highly visible. It's just that out here with torches, you can notice when the torchlight isn't shining on something, when the torchlight seems to just disappear. And they descended those steps, going down into those ruins. They could hear a very slight dripping sound down here in the ruins, and realized that perhaps a stream off of that river must pass overhead somewhere near here, and that water must just gradually filter through the ground. So they could hear the way that dripping would just echo down here in the ruins. And they thought to themselves that it makes sense that the ruins would be by a stream that was probably the path, or a large part of a path of the river, going back thousands of years. And their footsteps echoed as they explored these ruins. And after a little bit of searching, they found a doorway. It's like a stone covering a gap. And they moved that stone aside, worked together to slide that over. They walked into this open space and realized it was a large chamber. And in this chamber, their torches glistened and shone and reflected off of large amounts of gold around the walls. They noticed there was inscriptions, writing around the walls, and incredibly intricate artwork and pictures. And they realized that the pictures seemed to be depicting a story about an ancient civilization that once existed here, that had to leave as times changed, as uncertainty set in, as the flow of water changed course and reduced, as the area stopped being sustainable for their civilization. And so gradually the civilization dwindled as members of this civilization went off to find new lives. And they saw a chest at the back of this room. They went over to that chest, lifted the heavy lid, and inside was a scroll. They took that scroll out of the chest, and as they unrolled it, so they began to both have this sense of inner wisdom, like something on this scroll was communicating directly with them and resonating within them. They felt this deep connection with each other, with the world around them, with the environment, like everything's connected. They felt this was a profound experience. They put that scroll back, closed that chest, found their way back out of these ruins and headed back to the camp, headed back to that mini lodge. And as they lay in bed together, drifting off asleep, they just found themselves talking about the experience they had individually, and how they had such a similar feeling, such a similar experience to each other, from going into those ruins, from looking at that scroll, and that somehow they both felt the same, that they should put the scroll back and leave and not mention it. And they felt that they were taking away some learning from that experience, learning from what had happened to the ancient civilization, what they learned about them. And they felt they'd both developed a greater sense of inner wisdom, and they drifted off asleep. And the next day they got back in that truck, travelled back across that plain. They took the opportunity to take more photos, and they enjoyed the different light, taking these photos in the morning, shortly after the sun had risen, contrasting to when they were taking photos in the afternoon towards when the sun was setting the day before. And they headed back and had to climb up that cliff. They climbed up the cliff, took this last opportunity to take some photos from the top of that cliff over the plain. This last opportunity to enjoy the view. And the two of them just held each other, looking out over the view, taking that view in together, holding these memories they'd been creating. They took a photo of themselves up here, with the plain in the background, those mountains off in the distance, the woodland, that river, before walking through that woodland back to the 4x4. Then making their journey back to the main lodge. They'd been here a couple of days now, and the plan was to go out and do a few more things, a bit more exploring, over the week that they're here. They look forward to going on a hot air balloon ride one morning. They look forward to going to a nearby animal sanctuary and looking at the work that they do there on another day. They look forward to a couple of days of just enjoying, relaxing and chilling out. And then, as their holiday draws to an end, they leave here, travel home. And once home, they get some of the photos printed up, some photos of them together on holiday, photos of them in a hot air balloon. They put those photos up at home before going to bed and drifting and floating comfortably and relaxed asleep, knowing they've learned so much, drifting asleep, dreaming of their learnings, of their time together, feeling a sense of inner well-being and serenity as they drift and relax and float asleep.